And a very good morning to you, and getting on with our first interview. Thanks for choosing Morning Live. Approved 350 Rand grant applicants are encouraged not to go to the post office, but rather to change their preferred method of payment by selecting the relevant option online to deposit directly into their bank accounts. Now, from the 31st of August until the 6th of September, beneficiaries will be able to enter the South African Social Security Agency system and change their details. The agency says that this will speed up the payment process and avoid unnecessary trips to the post office. Totsie Memela, the Chief Executive Officer of the South African Social Security Agency, joins us now to tell us more about this. Ms. Memela, thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live once again.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
Ms. Memela, there have been so many hiccups with this process, and understandably, when all of this began, it was an announcement that was made by the president with a system not being in place, and one concedes and understands that you needed to go through some teething problems, but things have not really let up for some South Africans, and I know you will say that you've helped many, but for those who've not been helped, it seems as though the weight of the earth is resting on their shoulders because they are desperate for this 350 Rand grant. So let's start by just taking a look at the statistics once again, the numbers. How many people have applied? How many have you been able to help? How many are still waiting?
The number of people that have applied are actually almost 8.5 million. Those are the numbers that have applied. As we've been indicating all along, it doesn't mean that when you apply, you necessarily qualify. So those that have qualified are about 5 million, and of those 5 million on each month, we've been able to pay 4.4 million in May, 4.2 million in June, and 4.2 again in July. And I think that the challenge that we continue to have is that, yes, much as we're able to pay people through the post office, it's important to indicate that the post office actually came to the rescue in light of the fact that people did not have a channel through which we could pay them. And the challenge we had was we need to pay people as quickly as we can. And because we already have a contractual arrangement with the post office, we then went to them and said, can you help us? And the number of people that are actually currently getting paid through the post office are about 2.9 million. Not many people have bank accounts, and I understand when you are not employed, it's difficult to have a bank account. So some of the people actually continue to give us bank accounts that are wrong bank accounts, and when we go through the validation, which is what is expected as part of the process, we find that those numbers don't work, and then we have to start again. But what we continue to do is we validate the details every month, and we actually assess the clients that apply every month. The other challenge that we had was it took quite a long time for us to finalize our arrangement with the banks for us to be able to pay e-cash, which we have since finalized. But again, even in relation to that, when people actually make that selection to be paid by cash send or e-wallet, it's very important to make sure that the number you give us is the number that is recurred, because if it's not recurred, it's going to be regarded as risky and we will not be able to pay through that. And I know that many of our people's numbers are not necessarily recurred, but again, it becomes a challenge that we need to finalize with regards to the AG, because we're going to be found wanting if we can't clarify as to whose number did we actually pay.
Now, Ms. Memela, you say that you verify those details every month, and one of the complaints that keeps coming up, at least from the correspondence that we have received, is that people have been paid once or twice and then they have not been paid subsequently. Is that one of the reasons why there seems to be a delay on that front? And also, how prepared is your system at this stage? Because there have been so many technical glitches and so many frustrations for applicants regarding these payouts.
I think in terms of glitches, we don't really have glitches. The only challenge that we continue to face is that If we get a new database and the database still picks you out as an individual, is a database that would get from another institution, whether it's UIF or we get information from NSFAS that says you actually have a loan from them if you're a student, or you actually are supposed to be receiving UIF grants, then we cannot give you. And there's particular individuals, for example, that have been contacting me individually. And if we continue to appear in that database, it becomes difficult for us to then pay, because then we'll be found wanting. And what we're doing is we're taking those ones specifically through the appeal process. Not now that the minister has actually done the directives, so that we can then be able to dig deeper to understand why are you still appearing in UIF when you say you have not worked for the past 18 months. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we currently have. It's not so much on the systems. It's just in terms of the process and the database that we're using, that we can't not validate the individual.
So now we've seen long queues forming at the post office, because some people have said that they've actually provided banking details, but somehow they've been told that they would be paid out at the post office in spite of that. And we've seen those queues forming, and you've been calling on people to wait for an SMS notification to avoid being turned away. So exactly how informed are people on the ground about the system? Because they keep going to the post office regardless. We keep receiving these complaints and requests for assistance regardless. So how exactly are people informed?
The people are informed. They are sent an SMS for them to go to the post office. Why we do that is to make sure that the numbers are not overpowering in terms of the post office system, because there's number of people that each post office can pay at a given time. So we send people SMSs as a result of that, so that we can stagger the queues at the post office. The challenge we have is that in many instances, it may mean that your money is in the post office, but we haven't sent you an SMS because we are waiting to make sure that there aren't too many people. So what people do, which creates the clogging again on the post office, is that people will go through to the post office even if they haven't received the SMS, which therefore means that the post office now has to deal with those they know they are expecting and those that they are not expecting. Even though your money is there, it's just for us to make sure that the post office can have the ability to stagger those numbers.
You do understand, though, Ms. Memela, because that is out of sheer desperation. Nobody wants to get up in the morning and go and stand in a 2, 3, 5 kilometer long queue, not knowing whether they're going to get paid that 350 Rand or not.
I do understand the desperation of people, and I really, really do appreciate. Hence, the post office is also looking at what processes can they use on their side to make sure that they separate at least the line of those people that have received the SMSs and those that haven't, so that they can assist as many people as they possibly can. But it does become a challenge when there isn't sufficient funds, because they order according to the numbers that they're expecting. And again, they're doing this to manage the issues of crime. Because as we know, in many instances, the post offices then get robbed, and they become a target because of the sheer volumes of the numbers. If there's too much cash in each post office, they then become vulnerable. And when they are vulnerable, it's not only the post office staff that is vulnerable. It therefore means that it puts also the beneficiaries in danger. The other challenge that we're beginning to experience is instances where people are getting robbed at the post office queues. Hence, we're saying the more other options that people have, the better it will be for people to make sure that they've got different options. And the other argument that has been raised is that other people have given us their bank accounts and we haven't paid them in their bank accounts. We would prefer to pay you in your bank account. But if when we validate the bank account, it's actually a wrong account, it therefore means that we should just not pay you. That's the other option that we have, that if we validate and it doesn't work, is not to pay you anywhere else until such time that you fix that bank account details. Hence, we're encouraging people again to say, if you have an option of a bank account, please rather upload your bank account again so that we can make sure that you don't have to go and queue at the post office. And we know that other people will not have options at all and will continue to pay them at the post office. It's just to make sure that we manage those fees, and because it does impact on issues of social distancing if we continue to have the sheer numbers that we have at the post office.
Ms. Memela, this is totally exasperating, I must tell you, and I cannot imagine if I feel this way. What about people who actually are in dire need of that 350 Rand? People who've been applying since the process was announced and they still have not been paid for some or other reason. Hence, I refer to technical glitches because, again, because of your verification system, so many messages coming through about people who say they haven't worked in over a year or more, and yet they are there and they are turned away because of an IRP5 that appears on the SAR system or something to that effect. Let me read a few of those for you. Don't take my word for it. Muzmuz says, I really find Ms. Memela's talk very exhausting now. SASSA is failing many unemployed South Africans. I want to know if an application is rejected on the basis of an IRP5, yet one hasn't worked since March 2019. What is that? And another one from Sakman who says, hi Sakina, I have two questions for the CEO. I've already helped people to update their banking details, but they are still receiving post office notifications to collect their grants. And what is the actual date for the SRD grant payouts? Ms. Memela?
We continue to pay out on a continuous basis. So on all those people that have applied, on a daily basis, we actually do pay out. So it's not like once you haven't been paid, you will not be paid. We continuously pay people. On people that are actually appearing in other databases, that's why we've agreed with the minister to actually go through an appeal process so that we can then go and use a different process to make sure that those people that say they haven't been employed for more than a year, they haven't been employed for 18 months, that we actually can take them through the process again. What must be understood is that the fact that it has been agreed in terms of us validating people to make sure that there isn't a double dipping. If we are not ensuring that once you've been validated through a particular database, you are validated and you are found to be there, and we continue to pay you, we then become found wanting when the audit is actually done. That's why we then have to put those people through an additional process of now putting them through the appeal. Once we put them through the appeal, if you applied, for example, in May or in June, and you go through the appeal and the process is what is found wanting, not because we're irresponsible, but because you were actually in the database, it therefore means that we need to pay you back. But I do understand that you're hungry now. You need the money now and not any other time. But unfortunately, we also need to make sure that the system that we use is auditable. We are actually going through an audit as we speak. Therefore, we need to engage with the auditors to make sure that we are not found wanting in terms of what has been agreed in terms of what we can and what we actually cannot do.
But are you sufficiently capacitated, just in terms of human resources, for example, Ms. Memela? Because if you look at the hundreds of thousands, the millions of applications that you receive, and your ability to basically work through those and turn them over in a reasonable time for people who are desperate, do you have sufficient capacity? Because I understand the explanation you just gave. However, there are people who have been approved, but they haven't yet been paid. They've been waiting for payouts after being approved. How do you explain that?
Now, the people that have been approved and have not been paid, I've explained. Either it's because we cannot pay you in the bank account that we've given us, because once we validated, the account number is wrong. Or we've paid your money into the post office, it's awaiting you to get an SMS because of the sheer volumes that are going through the post office. 2.9 million people are really a lot of people for the post office, and it would be because you're going through that process.
So, Ms. Memela, just a parting shot. It's 5 months down the line since the lockdown began. For those who haven't yet received all the money since they've started their application process, what is the way forward?
The way forward would be for people to give us their alternative bank that they want to be paid at, or for us to continue to pay them through the post office, or for us to use eCash, which we are now able to pay them through. And once they update and give us the eCash, we'll put their money in their cell phone.
Ms. Memela, unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but I'll tell you what, I will even volunteer my services to go and sit and man a desk there, because on a daily basis, I send emails to your department of people who have valid complaints. They've been waiting. And as you say, people are hungry today. People are begging for 350 rand, Ms. Memela. And it cannot be that 5 months down the line, they still have to wait.
I don't expect them to wait. That's why we continue to find all different channels so that we can make sure that we can expedite.
Well, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much, CEO of SASSA, Totsie Memela, talking to us about the window period, because now those who are approved for the 350 rand, they can now change their preferred method of payment to a bank account to have their monies deposited into that bank account as opposed to the post office. And you can, of course, do this online. And again, we will try our best to actually facilitate as far as we can. But those are the answers from the CEO of SASSA. Let's take a quick break.